is Bob Phibbs. I'm known as the Retail Doctor. I help some of the biggest brands in the world communicate better with their dealer networks, or if they have branded stores, how to do more with that. And along the way, I also work with field reps and sales reps as well. So I appreciate you listening to what I have to say in this session today. So I always start with goals. I mean, why are you watching this video unless you want to change something, right? So somewhere, somehow, something gave you leverage to change. And that's the first thing about setting some kind of a goal, because ultimately we set goals to change, and something may have happened. You're not making your quota, your dealer network is shrinking, your calls are going unanswered, you name it. There's a million reasons why. And I have similar things in my own personal business as the Retail Doctor. But I'll tell you, when you look at why you want to change and associate, I need to do this because I want to put more food on my table, or I want to get something, or I want to get a promotion, then that's the first step. You're unsatisfied with what you're doing right now, and that's good. But now you have to take that next step and say, well, aspirationally, what do I hope to get out of that? So I'm going to have more freedom, or I'm not going to have my territory manager breathing down my neck, or I'm going to have bragging rights, whatever. So you have the part that leverages it, that got you going, but now you have to put the aspirational side to it as well, which is, what am I going to get out of this? And when you equate enough pain to make you change, and you see a better aspiration, you see a better goal, see yourself in a better light, then the journey's worth it. But if you don't get those two right, you're going to be like a lot of those people who make a New Year's resolution, I'm going to try better, and then a week later they're having a bagel and a Frappuccino and saying the hell with the diet. And I don't want that for you. So when you make that association of what am I going to get out of it, you see that well enough, then it changes, right? And then your goal has to be clear. So you can't say, the example I always heard when I was going through, Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins and a lot of those guys in the 80s, that think of it as two ways. Your buddy says, let's go on a cruise. And you're like, okay, great. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to have fun, and it'll be nice, and it'll be great. We'll be gone for 2 weeks. It's all included. And you're like, maybe. But what if that same guy said, hey, I want you to join me, or gal, doesn't matter, significant other, partner, wife, husband, whatever. We're going to fly from New York. We're going to land in Greece. We're going to spend a week on a private yacht searching the azure blue seas. We'll be able to fish and eat what we catch. We also have a 5-star chef who'll be on board, and every night there's going to be drinks and dancing and all kinds of other things. And then we're going to board the QE2, and we're going to take that up to London, and every stop along the way is going to be one of the great cities of Europe, and then we'll be back in 2 weeks. I don't need to go into too many more details, but you get the idea that when the goal is broken down and you can see it, then you're more inclined to want to follow it. So that's my tips on setting goals and what you do with it. And don't assume that just because you want to change, your family is going to support you. Well, they aren't, because the last part of goal setting is more than likely you're going to have to come up with something that you're willing to get rid of. So understand that if you're willing to put your shoulder into it and lift more, or back into it, then you're probably going to have to go through and be willing to say this will be less time for me on my iPad. It's going to be maybe less movies. It's going to be getting up earlier. Maybe it's going to be different choices when you're eating, whatever it's going to be. But you've also got to be realistic what you're going to give up. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't even think about the family time. I was a bad relationship when I was starting out. Working 70 or 80 hours a week was easy. And then when you meet somebody and you start saying, well, wait a minute, that's time away from them, you start to get choosy. So make sure that last part of your goal setting, be realistic about what that's going to cost your family, your personal life, because at the end of the day, nobody ever, dies saying, I wish I spent more time at the office. They almost always have the regret of family because they didn't include that in the equation. And also, I've been asked to talk about balancing your personal success and team success. Well, I always think you have to give back. So, it's wonderful. I'm kind of a bold personality, and I always like to say, it was all me, I'm wonderful. But at the end of the day, there's really an element of teams that you need to be aware of. And I teach a lot about personality styles, and I don't spend a lot of time on it. Just understand that there are different personalities in support, and along the way you've got to be able to give them some love, or they're not going to help you as much. Fair enough? So you can certainly go onto my site, retaildoc.com, find the resource center. There's a personality quiz you can take. It just helps you get a basic idea of where you are. There's no bad or good, but if you understand who you are, then you understand how that plays into people you have to talk to along the day. And so the driver, that's like Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or pretty much anybody on Wall Street or a villain in a movie. It's all about me. It's power. I did it. I'm strong. And the downside of them, they can be kind of arrogant and they can be self-obsessed. And a lot of speakers are drivers. I'm a driver personality. And the next group are the analyticals, like Spock, like anybody on this old house, like your CPA, you're probably your CFO of your company, and they've got a process. They go from A to B to C to D. And that's great because you really don't want your CPA to say, what the hell, let's just write this on the tax form and see what happens. You want them to have a process. And so probably somewhere along the line, that's somebody you have to talk to. But notice that's very different than the driver, who probably is your boss, or certainly up in the CEO level, who they want the credit for it, right? They did it. They're not going to be willing to give it as easily as you. And then the third personality is like the expressives, like any actor, any comedian. Think of Jack in the movie Titanic. Oh, let's top of the world, Rose. And then he dancing a jig with the Irish in the bottom of the boat, and then he's up with a tux smoking with the guys. They're like that dog, new puppy in a dog, what do they call it? In a dog yard. Anyway, you get the idea. Running around with the other dogs. Let's throw the ball. Let's have a frisbee. Yeah. They're all a lot of excitement, but they don't follow through with a lot. A lot of salespeople fall into that expressive or driver personality. They're real big egos, and that's fine. But the downside of expressives, they don't tend to get things done as well. And the last one are the amiables. Amiables are like the salt of the earth, like teachers, nurses, salon owners. They are more interested in you than in themselves, and they're in fact like the exact opposite of a driver. So they're the 4R, but at the end of the day, you've got to think, where am I going to come in contact with these? So expressives are going to be like other guys like you. It's a lot of competition, but they're going to do it their own way. And if that's you, that's could be a weakness and a good thing. But the amiables, the ones that most of us don't really think about because they're kind of beige. They're not saying, notice me, but they're probably the ones in customer support that you really need. So one of the things I've done is bring a plant to all of them who really support me at some off-the-wall time. Yeah, it's easy to do it at Christmas, but do it in the middle of July, or you do something to show that you really appreciate their help, because they are loyal to a fault, and they are often the ones that don't really say, I need any help or I want any attention. So if you understand that, then that balances the team success. When you get big accounts, you want to share it with them because they're living vicariously through drivers and expressives. Does that make sense? So, and the last thing is amiables love stories. So you tell them about what happened, they like all of that. But again, drivers are more ego, analyticals more facts, expressives are what's new, trendy, cool, I did it, I tried it, and then amiables are more the stories. So, what are the hard questions you have to ask yourself if you fall short of goals? The number one place I always start is, what could I have done better? So, what did I bring to the table that was wrong? What could I have said differently? And then also acknowledge that, maybe I was here at the wrong time for them. Maybe they had too many people that were asking the same thing. Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe I didn't prep the call well enough. And then I always go with, what information do I wish I had now that I should have gotten before the call? So, one of the big things I like to do is check everybody out on LinkedIn and Facebook. That's pretty easy to do. You should at least have a basic understanding of how that works so that you can go through and understand what they've been up to. And yeah, maybe half of your clients aren't, but if they are on it, you can get an awful lot of information about them pretty easily. And in the old days, we'd say, just try to get in the door and then look around and see if there's anything you have in common. And that still can work. But the days of you walking in as an outside field rep and, hey, how's it going? Oh, it sucks to be us. Oh, yeah, here's a dozen donuts. Yeah, can you give me a return authorization for this product, your position will be gone, man. If that's all you're doing, or gal, man or woman, at the end of the day, you've got to make some kind of a contact with these people. So the more information you have, the better. Instead of asking how business is, you want to share positive stories, because if they associate positive stories with you, you can change the dynamic and show them how to sell your product a little better, or how to use it a little better before that other sales rep comes in and says, hey, I can do the same or better for less. Because everybody's gunning for everybody right now, right? And at the end of the day, you're going to have to look at it and say, hey, SW, 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 N. And that's really quite simply, some will, some won't, so what, next. As long as you just keep bringing yourself up, you're fine. But when you get into that place, like you're sitting in your car after lunch, you're like, oh, I know that he's not in, or I know she won't take my call, or oh, I know that's not going to work. And you start making those excuses, that's the time you need to have that conversation with yourself and say, do I have leverage enough to change? Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you more successful. And what's the biggest thing to manage my own mindset? I really watch what I allow in my head. I'm a speaker, and so a lot of times I'll be watching a movie with a buddy's house or something, and it's got a lot of swearing on it. I'm like, I can't listen to this. And I was like, why? Because I'm afraid that might get into my head. Or my friends on either side of the politics, they just want to rail and get angry and all that. It's like, you know what, I can't do this. Because when I get out there into the world, I've got to be able to open my heart to people. And this is going to make me crass and no, I don't want to do this and you're wrong and that is not the way salespeople work. The number one thing you have to monitor is what are we allowing in, and then what are we talking about in our free time. I know one of my clients told me, I said, what really made you successful? He says, the day I was at a Super Bowl party and two of the three people standing around talking to me were talking about how their cars have been repoed in the last 30 days. And I realized, holy crap, I'm hanging with the wrong crowd. Well, it's the same thing with your ears. That if that's the kind of stuff you're talking about, how it sucks to be you and it's unfair and everything's rotten, you're not going to be as successful. You're going to give into that whole image that the world's against you and you can't make it. So don't do that stuff. That's just not good for you. And, what are you telling yourself? I know that when the big crash happened in 2008, and I lost like 4 of my main clients, and I'm looking at my book just opens up in January and I'm free. And worse, that not only did I lose the clients, but the people, my contacts, were gone. And I just said, holy crap, what am I going to do? And I went back to something I learned back probably 30 years ago and listened to The Strangest Secret. Now you can buy that, or you can listen to it on YouTube, and it's kind of sound like your grandfather. I must have listened to that for 5 or 6 times a day for 3 weeks just to get my head in the game. Because The Strangest Secret really is, we're about as happy as we make ourselves up to be. So if you are saying it's not good, just change the dialogue with yourself. What if we could? What if we could? What if I could? And suddenly you start looking at possibilities instead of excuses. And as a salesperson, let's face it, we don't make money on excuses. So what could I do? What else could I have done? And just as long as you're asking that question of yourself and you're looking at yourself more like an actor, like, wow, I didn't believe that guy. He was phony. He wasn't prepared for the call. Oh, well, then how do I change that? Oh, I got to ask better questions of myself. I'm sure you've heard that before. And so that kind of ends my segment. I am Bob Phibbs, the Retail Doctor. You can find me at retaildoc.com, retaildoc.com. And I actually have all of my sales process online at SALESRX.com. And I certainly invite you to find me on LinkedIn or on Facebook, The Retail Doctor, or Twitter, The Retail Doctor. And more importantly, just remember, you are about as happy as you make yourself up to be. So as you're going out there today, just look yourself in the mirror and say, what am I grateful for? And what am I going to put in my head that's going to help me make money